All right, guys, welcome back. My name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and this video, possibly the most important in this entire playlist. This whole playlist actually built up to this video. I could not do this video without first covering all of the stuff that we've already covered. And you guys are going to see that in this video. So if you're watching this and you do not yet understand how to commit or clone, push, pull, if you do not know how to stage, unstage, stash, if you do not know how to branch or merge or rebase, if you do not know how to cherry pick or create a PR or add a tag and perform a release, all of these things are going to be prerequisites to actually doing Git Flow. So I highly recommend watching the earlier videos in this series before this one. But if you're caught up and you're with me, this video will probably be the most exciting. So everything we've learned so far has basically just been a tool how to do this, how to commit, how to branch. But the question now becomes, now that we have all of these tools in our toolbox, we know how to use all of these things, when should I actually commit? When should I actually merge, right? How's the team actually going to do this in a production environment? So every company might have their own kind of personal tweaks on how and when to branch, how and when to merge. But generally speaking, most companies follow something called Git Flow. It's quite literally a best practice, a pattern for when to branch and when to merge. And in this video, we're going to cover everything that you need to know about how to use Git Flow. So I'm going to do a deep dive into all of the steps as we go through it in this video. And then we're going to wrap up, kind of rapid fire, just going through some quick examples of it. To give you guys a quick high level of what Git Flow is before we jump into it, when you're using Git Flow, you basically have two main branches. You have a main branch and a development branch. The main branch is going to be used for all of your release commits. So anytime your code actually goes to the end user, we'll update the main branch. But anything other than that will be done on the development branch. So the development branch is going to be where we're doing most of our work. And then from the development branch, we will branch again onto a feature branch. So if I go to build a feature in my app, I will first branch from development to a feature. I will build out that feature, and then I will merge that feature into the development branch. And then I'm going to branch it again and build another new feature, and then merge that into development. And then I will branch another feature, and then merge that into development. And then every once in a while, we're going to want to actually release these features. And so I'll then take my development branch, and I will create a release branch. And once that release is ready to go, and it actually goes out to users, I will then merge the release branch into the main branch, the original sacred timeline that I was talking about. It is definitely confusing the first time you do it. I don't expect you guys to fully understand it right now. In this video, we're going to first slowly walk through all of these steps, and then at the end of the video, we're going to do it in real time and perform all of these actions like I actually would be if this was my job, if this was a production environment. I would say by the end of this video, you should know everything that you need to know to use Git in a professional environment. My recommendation would be after we finish learning here, go and create your own project and try to do Git Flow by yourself. Try to get those branches working, try to get those features working, and once you do it a couple times, you'll probably get in a much better hang of it and get much more comfortable at it. But this is it. Once you understand this, and once you get comfortable with the Git Flow, you're an expert at Git. There's really not much else that you need to learn. This is what the teams will expect you to know, and quite frankly, knowing this probably puts you further ahead than a lot of other engineers. There are a lot of engineers that will go their entire career with never actually understanding how to use Git Flow. But once you do, you will 10x your productivity. Your entire team will 10x their productivity. So without further ado, let's get into the flow and perform Git Flow.
Welcome back, everybody. In this series, we are learning Git and source control. And we've covered basically everything that we need to know. We covered cloning, committing, staging, stashing, pushing, pulling, merging, rebasing, cherry picking, PRs, merging, squashing and merging, protecting branches, code owner files, git ignore files, readme files, releases, tags, versioning. I think that's more than you probably need to know to build most apps and use Git and source control. But what we're going to do now is what is commonly known as Git Flow. So basically, when we're creating these branches and doing these merges, generally speaking, there is nothing that's going to restrict us on how we need to branch. So I could create hundreds of branches. I can use branches that are not the main branch. So far, we've only merged into the main branch, right? But this is sort of like the Wild West here. We could really do whatever we want. I've been telling you guys how to write good commit messages, how to merge back into main, but really you didn't have to merge back into main. So the question is, now that we know how to do all this stuff, we know how to branch, we know how to merge, we know how to push and pull. The question is, what is the best practice for doing all of this in an actual production environment? When should I actually merge? When should I actually branch? How should I branch? And when should I merge into main or merge into somewhere else? So in this video, we're going to talk about Git Flow, which is the most common way for teams to handle this. It's essentially best practices for dealing with this entire Git history. So a lot of what we've done so far was for learning purposes. But if this was a production app, if I was working for like a client, had a bunch of engineers on my team, I wouldn't want this to be my history. I would want something a little bit more robust with a little bit more rules around it. When I'm working my own projects, personal projects, I might do what we've done because I don't care so much about getting the Git exactly perfect. I want to move fast in my side projects. But at the office, on a real team, on an app that's got lots of users where we're actually making major changes, I want to make sure that the commit history is neat and organized and all the engineers can work independently and work on the same system of Git Flow so that everybody's on the same page on how it should work. So we're going to go through that now. And it's a little confusing if you've never done it before. If you Google what is Git Flow, you'll get a bunch of articles. And again, this is just a best practice. So basically, we have our main branch. This is the main branch here, this light blue. And what this is showing us is that we actually want to create a second branch called develop, and then do all of our developing on that other branch. And only when we are ready to release will we squash and merge and put it into the main branch. So all of my regular commits while I'm developing are happening on my development branch and not on the main branch. So the main branch is pretty clean, right? It's just the initial repo and then V1 and then V2 and then V3. It doesn't have all of the 100 other commits in between. So I keep the main branch, again, that sacred timeline, I keep that as clean as I possibly can be. So it really just is a release branch. That's the main branch. That's the sacred timeline. All of my work I'll do on the development branch here. So if all my work's on the development branch, how do I actually build a feature? I could build that feature by committing to the development branch, or I could create another branch from the development branch to focus on this feature. So now I'll come over here and I'll create a second branch that's for this specific feature. I'll build out this feature, and when this feature is ready, I will now merge it into the development branch. So here is one feature, and then here, this other green line is a second feature. So when I'm building feature A, I'm down here. When I'm building feature B, I'm going to create a second branch over here. When this feature is not ready to go yet, so I'm not going to merge it back into development. But this feature is ready to go, so I'll now merge that one into development. And you'll notice that when I build a feature, I'm merging it into development. I'm not merging it directly into production, not merging it into main. So I create a development branch, I create a feature branch. When the feature is ready, I merge the feature into development. Now, after I merge the feature into development, I'm ready to actually release it. So I don't want to just merge it directly into main. I want to create a release branch. So I'm going to create another branch here for the released version. And the reason I'm doing this is because while I go and create this branch, it's going to get QA'd. It's going to get tested for quality assurance. We're going to make sure there are no bugs in it. And if there is a bug, we might have to do another commit before it actually gets released. So we have our release branch, which is like a pending release in case we have to make more updates. And the reason I'm doing it separately from the development branch is because once we branch here for release, this workflow will be separate from the rest of this workflow. The rest of development will continue to happen. All the engineers on my team will continue to merge into development regardless of whether or not this release has gone out yet, because this release is on its own branch. So even if we're still making changes before we release it, it has no impact on what's happening on the development branch because we already branched off it. And when this does get released, I will then merge it into the main branch. The last thing to point out is if you have a release that is out and turns out you put it out, but there's actually a bug in production, you now need to do a hotfix. So when you do a hotfix, you need to work off of the branch in production, because after you released, you continued to work on your development branch, right? So after we released it up here, a bunch of stuff continued to happen on development branch. But when we go to fix this bug in production, we don't want to also include all those new commits onto development. We want to take the currently released version, branch that, make our changes, and then just push that hotfix, that patch, back to production. So when I do that, I'm going to now make this the hotfix. I'll release this, merge that into main. And at the same time, let's take that hotfix and merge it into the development branch so that development also gets those updates. So here I have to merge twice because of the hotfix. So this is the Git Flow process. Basically, you have a main branch and a development branch. You build features separately and then merge them into development. You create release branches when you're ready to release, and you separately have to create hotfix branches when you need to do a quick patch. So I think the easiest way to learn this is to actually go through the motions. So for the rest of this video, we're going to actually now create this whole Git flow and go through this together. So let's jump back in to our project. I'm going to do it through Xcode, even though I prefer Git Kraken. The first thing we want to do is create that development branch. So let's right click, create a new branch, and call this development. Click create, and let's push that up to GitHub. Now, oftentimes your development branch, you might also want to add rules. So we added branch protection rules to the main branch. You might want to add some of those to development as well. So for example, if I go back into my repo here, I might want to add a rule for the development branch that says it requires a pull request and requires one approval. Maybe it doesn't need to be a code owner. Maybe it doesn't need to be all this other fancy stuff. But let's just get it a PR with an approval and call it a day. That's at least something. So now I have rules for my development branch. So we have two branches, main and development. And now while we are going to actually build, we're going to branch off development. So we have this purple branch for development. We're going to branch off and we're going to create a feature. So let's now from the development branch, I'm going to create another branch. And let's call this, let's do feature. Let's say add profile view. Maybe that's our new feature. So I'm going to go through, and while I'm adding profile view, I'm going to work in this branch only. So let's say here, maybe we create a new file that has the profile view. Maybe profile view has my name on it. Let's just put Nick, and let's commit that. And do feature, add profile view. Stage and commit. Maybe I want to update that a little bit. Let's add maybe at state private var is premium of type bool equals false. And let's commit that as well. And let's say feature add is premium bool. Let's stage it. Let's commit it as well. And let's push those changes up to GitHub. And let's go ahead and push those changes up to GitHub. All right, so now I have a main branch, I've branched off with a development branch, and I've created a feature in a separate branch. So now once this feature is good to go, I'm going to create a PR. So let's open up, let's go back to our repo, let's create a pull request, and we want to create a new pull request where we merge the add profile view into not the main branch, but the development branch. So this is how the general flow is going to be. Create a feature, merge it into development. Let's create a pull request. I have my pull request template. This is a new feature. I'm not going to fill out the whole template right now. Let's go ahead and click create pull request. So now we're going to go ahead and actually merge this. Let's bypass the protections and merge this into the development branch. Cool. I merged it. I don't really need it anymore, so I can delete it. If I go back to my Git Kraken and I check out the development branch and I pull down those updated changes, I can see that we merged this into development. Let's go ahead and delete that branch as well. All right, so I can see here that I have main and now I have my development branch. So if I were to see this on here, I created development branch purple, and then I created two commits for this new feature, and then I merged it back in to the development branch. So my development branch is now ahead of the main release branch. This is how most of my working flow is going to be. It's going to be branch development, add a feature, merge to development. 90% of the time, I'm just working on the development branch. Oftentimes, main is far behind the development branch. So if I'm building a lot of features for 2 weeks, I might have 100 commits above the main branch. So it's okay that main kind of falls behind. Main is just going to be the commits for releases. And development's going to be basically merging everything that is actively being changed, actively being worked on. So when I push to my manager for them to QA it or to test the feature, I'm going to archive the development branch. But when I'm actually ready to release, I'm releasing the merge branches. So now we have this development branch, and let's pretend like it's actually good to go, and we're ready to release it. And again, if I look at this here, we've created, from our main branch, we created a development branch, we created a feature branch, we added some commits to fix that feature, and now we merged this feature back into development. And when we did that merge, if we had a lot of commits here, I might have made this a squash and merge, but I just did a regular merge for now. So we're back in development, and now it's time to actually release this. So let's go ahead and create this release branch now. So I'm going to come back into my Xcode project. And from the development branch, I'm going to right click and create, let's put it in a release folder, and I'm going to call this version 1.2.0. I'll put the branch name as release underscore 1.2.0 for now. And let's go ahead and click create. All right, so I've created a branch from the development branch. And let's go ahead and push that up to GitHub. And then let's actually increment the version number. So if I come back into the project navigator, this is going to be version 1.2.0 and build number 4. Let's go ahead and commit that. Let's call this release. Let's do 1.2.0 build 4, stage it and commit it. And let's push that up to GitHub as well. Some people like to do this increment the version before they branch to the release branch. Some people like to do it after they create the release branch. So you might do this commit on development first and then branch off, or you can branch off and then do this commit. I don't think it really matters. So the purpose here is that we now have 2 branches. So in the release branch, that's going to be specific for this release. The development branch is going to continue living. So now we have 2 different branches on purpose. So 2 things that are going to happen here. Firstly, when I create this release branch, I'm going to now archive this before I merge it into main and before I actually release it to production. I'm going to archive this and I'm going to send this version of my app to every tester I have. I'm going to put it on my own phone, my manager's phone, all of our quality assurance testers. I want everybody to find any bugs before this goes to production. My hope was that when we were building this feature, the developer fixed all the bugs. And then when we made that PR and reviewed the code, we also found any outstanding bugs. But now there's a chance that while we created this, maybe we missed a bug, and while we're testing it, that bug is going to happen. So the reason for having this release branch is that we can fix these bugs separate from continue working on development. So you can imagine a situation where I push this and we start testing it, and then while that's happening, separate of that, other engineers on my team are working on the development branch. So let's switch back to the development branch. I'm going to switch back to development here. And let's just pretend like we made some other changes in development. Let's branch. Let's do another feature. And let's call this ABC 789. Let's say add profile analytics. Let's click create. And then from this feature, maybe on the profile view, I'm adding some code here. Let's do an on appear. And then I commit that. And let's do feature, add profile analytics. Let's commit that. And then let's go ahead and push that up to GitHub. Let's go to GitHub. We're going to go to pull requests and we're going to merge. Let's find our profile analytics. And let's merge that into the development branch. All right, I'm not going to deal with the template right now. Let's create the pull request and we can see the files that have changed. Okay, somebody's going to come in, they're going to leave a comment, they're going to approve it. And then we're going to come down here. Once it's approved, we're going to go ahead and merge it into development. So when I come back to my Kraken here and I update development, let's pull down those changes. We can see now that the release branch is actually behind the development branch. And I'm going to delete this branch because we just merged this feature in. So we can see here that we have the main branch way down here, we have the development branch way up here, and then the release branch is actually here. So in the time when I sent out this archive so that everybody could start testing it, while those tests are happening, the rest of my team is continuing to develop and build on development. So we're going to continue to add new features. But all of these features that are being added in the meantime before this actually gets released are going to be for the next release. And so that's why these are separate at this point, because when I create this release branch, this is what's going to go to production next. And I'm not going to be QAing all of these other features that are getting merged. These will get QA'd and tested at the next release. So it missed the cutoff for this release, and these are going to be in the next release now. So that's why development is separate from our release branch. And so now let's pretend like maybe while we're working on this release branch, let's switch to the release branch now. Again, in Xcode, we can just switch to the release branch by clicking here and switching to it. But let's pretend like we sent this out and we would send it to QA, and QA came back and said, hey, there's actually a bug on the profile view. Obviously, we hoped that we fixed all the bugs when we built the feature, and we hoped that we fixed all the bugs when we merged the PR and reviewed the code, but turns out we missed something. So now I'm going to go back to the profile view and I'm going to fix this bug. Maybe this should be true. And let's commit this. And let's call this a bug. This is not a patch because it's not in production yet. So I'll just call this a bug. Let's say fix is premium on profile view. And let's commit this and let's push this up to GitHub. So now I've made an extra commit on my release branch that again is not in my development branch. The development branch, while we continue to build and develop, has no idea that this is happening. These are separate actions. Again, this diagram here, we're over here on the release branch, and these branches, we're right here right now. This commit is not on the development branch, and it's obviously not on main either. This is the final commit I have for fixing those bugs before I go to production. Now let's pretend like, all right, we did release this branch. So now it's time to actually merge it into main. So this is when we're going to go and take our release branch and merge it, not into develop. And so now we're going to take our release branch and we're going to merge it into the main branch. So I'm going to go back to GitHub here. Let's go to pull requests. Let's create a new pull request where we merge release 1.2.0 into the development or into the main branch this time. So this is our big release. So we should only merge into main when we are sure that this code is good to go. Once I merge it into main, it's going into the App Store. We're not making any other changes. So I already reviewed this. I QA'd this. I'm sure this is good to go. Let's create the pull request. And generally there shouldn't be any comments on this PR because everything should already have been sorted through the release branch. So we're going to now merge from the release branch into the main branch. Let's go ahead and merge pull request. Let's go ahead and merge it into the main branch. Cool. Now I can delete the release branch because we don't need it anymore. And I'm going to come back to Git Kraken and let's pull down those changes just so that we can see it. So the main branch is updated. So once this happens, I'm going to let's delete our release branch. I'll do it through Xcode so you guys can see it. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go to the branches, this release. It's now released. Let's go ahead and delete it. Let's also go, we now also have this merge request for the release into main. So let's tag that up. Let's go ahead and create a tag. Put version 1.2.0 and let's create that tag. Let's also push that up to the origin and include tags. So now that I've done this release, I'm going to go to GitHub. I'm going to go to my repo. I'm going to add another release here. So this will be our second release, 1.2.0. Let's call this 1.2.0. Let's put this on March. And then let's generate the release notes. And what's cool here is when I generate the release notes, it's going to track what has happened between version 1, the last tag, and this tag. So version 1.0.1 and 1.2.0. And I can see the actual merge commits. So I can see that we added a profile view and we added a release. So oftentimes I'm going to click generate release notes and I'm going to let this be and I'll just publish as is. Or if I want to do a high level, I might just do add profile view in addition to what's changed. Let's go ahead and publish that release. So now I'm done. I have this working. This is good to go. I can see my latest release. It's all tagged up. The last thing we need to do now is update our development branch. So if I go back to my diagram here, I've now taken this release commit and I've merged it into the development branch. But that last patch that we had where we fixed that update on the release, so again, we did a commit fix is premium. This commit was only on the release branch. It was not actually ever added into the development branch. So all of those changes that happened on that release branch, I want to make sure that those are in both my main branch as well as my development branch. So I could then go and create a second PR where I merge the release branch into the development branch. So I actually already deleted the branch. So we could create another branch here and then merge it. But alternatively, I can also just merge main back into the development branch. So here is the line here is from the release down to development. But what I'm actually going to do is merge into main and then main into development. I guess this is the best practice, but we already deleted the branch. So now I'm just going to merge main into development. Let's go back to GitHub real quick. Let's go to pull requests. Let's create a new pull request and let's merge main into development this time. So almost like a reverse merge. We're going main into development, create that pull request. Let's call this release 1.2.0. So that's what happened. And that's what happened on the main branch here. Create the pull request and let's go ahead and just merge it. Let's bypass the rules, of course. And so now I can see that the commits, the release 1.2.0 and that bug fix are going back from the main branch now into the development branch. Confirm the merge. I'll come back in here, switch to the development branch. Let's go ahead and pull down the changes. And I should see the release merge back in. So in Git Kraken, I can now see that main has been merged back into development. Again, we could have taken our release branch and merged that into development and not merged main back into development, but really those are the same commit, so it really shouldn't make a difference. So I have my tag on 1.2.0 on the main and my development is back on top. So development now has all the updates from main as well as all the other stuff that we've been working on while that release branch was out. So while that release branch was out and we created a release here, we started adding profile analytics, right? So this is not released yet, but it is in development still. So now I'm going to continue again, building on development and then creating features and merging into development. And whenever I'm ready for release, I'll create a release branch. And then once that's released, I'll make sure those updates are merged to main as well as merged to development. The last thing to talk about is the hotfix, which is real quick, which is just we have this out in production, but we missed a bug. And if this is in production right now and I missed a bug, right? The problem is I can't do this fix on top of the development branch because we know development has other features, add profile analytics that are not in production. So if I were to branch from development and try to fix the bug right now, when I go to actually PR that, it's going to include all these other changes as well. So now I have to QA all these new features. So if something is already out in production, we want to go to that actual commit. So we're going to switch back to main. And then let's create a branch just from the main branch. Let's add a hotfix folder, sort of like a patch folder. Let's call this fix analytics issue. Let's pretend like we put it out and somebody said the analytics were wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and create this branch. Let's go to our profile view and let's fix the analytics. Maybe we'll add some on up here and do something here. Let's commit that down and let's call this a patch because it's already in production. We'll say fix analytics in profile view. Let's commit and let's stage and commit. Let's push this up to GitHub. So now I have this hotfix branch, which is this little red dot here. And this red dot is branched off of main and it's not in the main branch or in the development branch. And so once this is ready to go, I'm going to now merge this back into main as well as into development. So this is basically going to be another release. We have to do a release to update these fixes. So there might be multiple commits in here. But just to go through the motions real quick, we have this hotfix. Let's pretend like it worked. We need to increment the version number. So we're going to come in here. We're going to say 1.2.1, build number 5. Let's commit this. Let's do a release and call this 1.2.1, build 5. Let's stage it and commit it, push it up to GitHub. Now I'm going to go to GitHub and again, let's create another PR. So we're going to merge our hotfix now into the main branch. So again, we're doing it into the main branch because this is like our new release. We're fixing this bug in production. I'm not actually updating development with all those other changes as well. I want to keep this PR basically restricted to the problem that I'm fixing in production right now. Create the pull request. I can see here files changed. I'm going to view this one. I'm going to mark this one as viewed, and let's approve it, and good to go. So now we're going to come in here. Let's go ahead and merge it into main. And then before we delete it, let's create a second PR. Let's go ahead and create another pull request where we merge the analytics issue, the hotfix, into development as well. Let's go ahead and create a pull request here. And it looks like we actually have a conflict here. So we're now merged into main, and we're also trying to merge this back into development. And in the time that this happened, we added other commits into development, right? So the development branch actually has this add profile analytics commit already. So we were successfully able to merge it into main, but now we're running into a conflict when we try to merge it back into development. And so GitHub here is saying you need to resolve these conflicts before we fix it. So I'm going to do this resolve in GitHub just because it's so simple. This is basically asking us, do we want this code from the hotfix branch or this code from the development branch? And I want the hotfix branch. So I'm just going to delete this code here. Generally, I don't like resolving conflicts in GitHub. I don't like this editor, but I already showed you guys how to resolve conflicts in Xcode and Git Kraken. Let's go ahead and mark this as resolved. Let's commit the merge. Now that I've merged it into main and development, let's go ahead and delete it. Let's jump back into Git Kraken and just pull down the local changes. And let's go into the main branch where we create a tag. Let's call this, what version is this? 1.2.1. Let's push that tag up to GitHub. Go to our repo, create another release, draft a release, 1.2.1, auto-generate release notes, and publish. We got another release under our belt, guys, and both our development branch as well as our main branch have those updates from the hotfix. I'm going to go ahead and delete the branch for that now. Cool. All right, so that is Git Flow. It is definitely difficult the first time you do it, but I hope this helped you guys understand what's actually happening here. The gist of this is you have a main branch that is your sacred timeline. Your main branch is basically just your release commits. If I look at my main branch here, since I started using Git Flow, which was around here, the main branch, which is this purple branch here, it has the commit for 1.2.1. It has the merge for 1.2.0, but it doesn't have all these other commits in it, right? It's just got the merge commits for the releases. So I'm keeping the sacred timeline clean and organized. And then while I'm doing this, all of my actual work is happening in the development branch. So again, we created a branch where we're doing all of our real work. So most of the time, our commits are happening on development. We're working off of development. We're creating a feature. When we're ready for the feature to be good to go, we merge into development. Then we're going to create another branch for another feature. We're going to create that feature, and we're going to make a PR to merge it into development. And we're going to continually do that. That's what we're doing all week, basically. We're just creating branches, feature branches, merging into development, feature branches, merging into development. And then eventually, maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, we're going to go ahead and actually release an update to the App Store. So we're going to take whatever we have at development at that time, and we're going to branch it off and create a release branch. So any changes that didn't get into the development branch by this time, when we create this cut, are not going into production in this release. So when I create this branch, we can continue to work on development, but all those changes are not going to be impacted in this release. They're going to have to wait for the next release. And while I have this release branch, I can now do any final tweaks I need to, fix any final bugs before going to production. Once I go to production, I'll merge it into main, and then I'll either merge it also into development or merge main back into development. And then next week, we're going to continue working on development, building features, create a release branch, and then merge our release branch back both ways. If there's ever a problem with something in production, I can't branch off of development because development's going to have a bunch of commits that are not yet released to the public. So I have to branch off of main, do a hotfix or a patch release, and then merge that. And after I merge that hotfix, I also need to make sure that I update the development branch with those hotfix changes. So this is Git Flow in a nutshell. Hope you guys are feeling a little more comfortable with it. Generally speaking, if you're creating your own apps, you don't need to follow this to a T. It definitely gets a little annoying if you're the only engineer on the project and you're adding all these branches and forcing yourself to make PRs every single time. But if you don't have those branch protection rules, you can merge and do these merges without actually creating PRs like we did earlier in this series. Generally speaking, if you're on a production team, if you have a bunch of engineers, follow the Git flow. But if it's just yourself in a project, at minimum, I would say create a development branch and then build your features off of development. Just because you want to keep development separate from main and then just merge into main every time you do a release. Oh, all right, guys, that was a lot to go over. It took me a very long time to learn Git and especially learn Git Flow. So I can only assume that other people have struggled to learn this as well. So I hope that this course and this video have helped you guys really understand Git Flow and feel much more comfortable using source control overall. And please leave a comment below if this course helped you and let me know your opinions on if you're going to use Git Flow in your apps or not. Thank you all for watching. As always, my name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.